Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1% Better Recruitment podcast with your host, Charles Kiriakou. Today, I am joined by Mel Sedgley. Have I got that right?
Yeah, I've got that
I
right.
have got that right. Yeah, I messed up the intro and I was hoping I wasn't going to mess up the name. But yeah, really excited for today's episode. We've got loads of things to talk about today. And Mel and I had the pleasure of meeting for the first time. What was it, a week, 2 weeks ago or so?
Yeah,
Yeah. So, Mel, obviously, for people that may or may not know you, tell us a little bit about you, your story, and what you do now.
I will do. Thank you. First of all, thanks so much for reaching out to me in the first place. Obviously, we've been connected for a little while, and I was kind of cheering you on from the sidelines because we started kind of our own entrepreneurship journeys very similar times. So yeah, it's great to be invited on. Thank you. So yeah, oh gosh, my journey. So I've had about 11 years in the industry. Took a little bit of a break, kind of circa 2015 to 2017, where I worked and kind of saw life on the corporate side. But predominantly my work kind of lies within the recruitment industry. My background, kind of most recently, which I'll come on to tell you a little bit more about, is consultancy. So full people and talent consultancy offering for the recruitment industry predominantly. But prior to that, I worked for a business called Oscar as a head of people and culture globally. Was really fortunate to experience some incredible growth and be a part of and instrumental to that growth in the 6 years that I was there. And I guess kind of my mission now is to build on all of the experience and all of the success that I've had and help work with recruitment businesses to be the best that they can be, with the ultimate goal of having high performance cultures. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a little bit of context without rambling too much.
Don't worry, honestly, I can ramble for England and probably the rest of the world, so don't worry about that. Well, look, thank you very much again, Mel. It's yeah, I'm really excited to do this episode. And one of the first topics we said that we were going to speak about is basically, setting a business up and being a working mum. How many kids is it that you got? Is it just the one?
No, so I have two children.
Two
I'm
children.
in the trenches at the moment. So for anybody that says or has said you need a village,
Mm,
and you absolutely do, and I'm really fortunate that I do have an amazing support network. So I've got my little girl Arabella, who's 4,
mhm.
and I've got Rory, who is 2. So there's 23 months between my little rascals. And, whilst it's amazing and it keeps me on my toes, it's a roller coaster.
Mm,
Um, and I've always been fortunate that I've been able to kind of live my kind of career goals and dreams. I know that might sound a little bit cheesy, but for me, when I kind of found out that I was pregnant unexpectedly for the first time, I was on a really exciting trajectory at Oscar. And I've said this a few times. I'll never forget going to my CEO and saying, "Got something to tell you," and I just burst out crying because I was just like, A, it wasn't planned. B, does this
mm,
mean that I'm going to lose my job and not be able to achieve all of the wonderful things that I had set in stone?
mm.
Ridiculous, like absolutely wild. He gave me the biggest hug. He was like, "That is the best news ever. You'll be the
Oh,
best mum ever, and we're going to support you." So just
oh.
having that kind of nurturing kind of warmth in terms of the response when you're
Mm,
going through the unknown was amazing. But I essentially I got made redundant in November, as we spoke about
mhm,
offline, and I'd had a lot of support from the business in the sense that I could, you know, do everything that I wanted to achieve from a career perspective and also be a mum and
mm,
be there to see, my little girl take her first steps, or,
mm,
go to the nativities, or, whatever it is. I had the green light to go and do it, but the trust to know that actually you're still going to do a great job for us. And I
mm.
wanted to, more importantly. So when I got made redundant, and to to give a little bit of context, I worked, well, we were a 4.5 day working week company, which, was great at the time back in, 2020, 2021, and beyond. And I had loads of flexibility. So I got made redundant from a job where I was adding value. And I mean, gosh, I joined the business. I think there was kind of maybe 40 heads in the UK at the time. We had an office in Houston. So we had 2 offices, and we just opened the office in London. By the time that I exited, we'd opened an additional 6 offices. We had, a number of different brands. I took the head count, not just solely, but, was instrumental in taking that to 170 globally. So there was social proof that actually, I'm pretty good at what I do.
Yeah.
And so to leave that and have the flexibility that I had, it was really unnerving, because all of a sudden I'm, out on the job market in a, tumultuous market where it's very much a case of, well, what opportunities are there for somebody like me, where I do still need and think that flexibility is important. So that led me to setting up Edge, which is my talent and people consultancy, and setting up, in answer to your question, setting up a business as a working mum. How do I describe it in one adjective? Wild, but super, super rewarding. I am in control of my own destiny. I can control who I work with, when I work, and the projects that I choose to deliver on. The businesses that I partner with understand me, my circumstance. They're very, very values led, and they have super inclusive cultures. So there's a relatability there. And for me, it was, it's nerve-wracking, of course it is, but it's the best thing that I've ever done personally. My advice to anybody that is in a similar position, or maybe they're employed thinking, I love a little bit more flexibility. Maybe they don't get that where they are. Maybe they're thinking, I can do it all, because that's my mantra. Like, I can do it all. I can be a mum. I can run a home, and I can have a really bloody successful business. I don't profess it to be, amazingly massive, or, am I striving to scale it? I don't know. Right now, it's a lifestyle thing. It suits me. It enables me to follow on that path of, this is what I enjoy. This is what I thrive in. So my advice would be just back yourself, and have that faith, because it's really, really difficult. And we'll come on to kind of society and, the echo chamber of what women can and can't do. This voice in your head that tells you can't, you really can.
Love it. Yeah, no, it's honestly, it's so inspirational. And I think I'm just very lucky that my mum was the way she is, because her and I were speaking on the phone the other day, and she was saying to me that when she was 9 months pregnant, she was still cutting hair, and she was like a freelance hairdresser. She used to do freelance like tanning and all that type of stuff. She used to sell beauty products and like creams and things like that. So she was very entrepreneurial, and she had me and my brother, who were nightmare children, like ADHD,
Boys
bouncing
usually
off the
are,
walls.
Charles.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I won't disagree with that. But she was managing the home, managing all the finances, and raising 2 kids at the same time. So it's so lucky that I had that. But then at the same time, I personally think it's almost given me a slightly warped perception, because my mum, and I know most people say their mum's like a superhero, but like my mum sounds very similar to you in respect that, you're running the house, running a business, you feel like you can take it all on. But for most people, I don't think that's really the case. I think it's an awful lot. For example, my wife, the thought of running a business, in general, just that, is like overwhelming, and working full time and having to go into an office, and then the thought of running, having children and running the house, for her, she's like, that seems like a bit overwhelming. What do you think it comes down to in terms of maybe your upbringing, your mindset? Like, what do you think makes you able to juggle all these things and still have a thriving business, a thriving family and stuff?
I love questions like this, because they they make you dig deep. I had an amazing childhood. You know, my mum and dad was so nurturing. I had two
Mm.
older brothers, one more protective than the other. But you know, I was loved. However, we didn't have much money. My dad was a commercial salesman
Mhm.
on the road, so he was selling parts for trucks and trailers and going, you know, knocking on doors practically every single day. Um, Alongside that, he was selling cars at the weekend as well in his spare time. So back in the day, you know, when the internet wasn't really a thing,
Mm.
he's putting adverts on loot for cars, and
Nice.
he's doing all right. And my mum's incredible. My mum is actually just retired, so she was
Mm.
head of admissions at the local college, and phenomenal at what she did, and did it kind of single-handedly, full-time worker, quite a demanding job, three children in short succession. So there's only 4 years between me and my eldest brother.
Oh wow.
Um, and they did everything to provide the life that they gave us. You know, the toys that you wanted at Christmas, we got. The holidays we got. Granted, I didn't go on an aeroplane until I think I was about 9 years old.
Mm.
So our holidays were, you know, in the caravan, and
Yeah, yeah.
lovely, lovely, wholesome memories. But I think growing up around the constant conversations in the kitchen when you sat there having your tea
Mm.
or you're watching the TV, there was stress in our household around
Mm.
money financially. And I never wanted to feel like that growing up, or
Mhm.
starting, you know, to become an adult in the working world, and B, kind of subject my children to that worry as well.
Mm.
However, to caveat that, it had such a positive impact on why I am the way I am.
Mhm.
So, you know, as soon as I could get up and go out to work, I did. Let's start
Mm.
with the paper round, you know,
Mm.
from 12 years old. Then work experience, go to the hairdressers, worked every weekend. Then John Lewis, you know, when I could get an actual kind of fully proper job.
Mm.
And then I got into sales. And then I was like, I want more, I want more, I want more. And
Mm.
like everybody says, it's super cliche, but I fell into the recruitment industry.
Mm.
So I think the reason why probably stems heavily from my childhood.
Mhm.
Like I say, super nurturing, super warm, gorgeous, amazing memories. But there was financial stress in our household.
Mm.
So being able to provide an environment that, I mean, my kids wouldn't understand anyway now. And of course,
Mm.
you have to have those financial conversations. But I'm really fortunate in that the drive that I have is emulated in my partner. So
Mm.
he's got his own business, you know, successful bespoke furniture business going for over 10 years now.
Mm.
We both have really shared aligned goals, and we want to provide the best life possible. I'm not talking, you know, just materialistic stuff. I think that's a
Mm.
byproduct of having, you know, a good income and everything, but actually just providing an environment where my kids aren't thinking, we've gone out for tea, but I don't think I can order that thing because it seems a little bit expensive, which was what I did.
Yeah, same.
So yeah, I think that honestly is, if we dig really deep, and I'm putting my heart on my sleeve here,
Mhm.
but I think that's why I'm the way I am, and that's your question.
Mm. Oh, bless you. That's honestly, it's brought up a lot of memories of my childhood as well, to be honest, because my childhood leading up to the age of 16 was 99.9% positive, to be honest. Like primary school and stuff, amazing. First couple of years of secondary school, amazing. You know, my mum doing the things that she did and all the rest of it, just incredible. And
Yeah.
I've said this a few times on the podcast already, but my three out of my four grandparents were immigrants, one from South Africa, two from Cyprus. the grandparents that I knew really well from Cyprus, who died only about 10 years ago.
Mm.
They set up a massive factory in North London, hired people from all different backgrounds, and bought a humongous house outright in like the 70s. You know what I mean? So they were like balling out of control, basically. But I kind of was, I saw that what hard work was, and that the barriers that someone had in that day and age coming into the UK in the 50s and 60s, not knowing a word of English, to then build a business and essentially back then, earning hundreds of thousands of pounds, which nowadays is ridiculous money. It kind of
Yeah.
imprinted a similar type of attitude to you, that like almost anything is possible. But then when my parents split up, and my dad was always terrible in business, all the good principles that you will go into a business and teach, he didn't have. And he was terrible with
Yeah.
money. He was not a good parent or role model to have. And when my parents split up, it was my mum who was on benefits because she was a cancer survivor. She had multiple orthopedic surgeries. So she's now running a house with two teenagers on benefits. So whenever we used to go out for dinner, we'd go to a Harvester because it's cheap. I love
Yeah.
steak. If I had my way, I would eat steak every single day. And I would go to the menu and go, I'll have the sirloin steak, please. And my mum would just look at me and go, you can't
Are you
afford it.
joking?
Yeah, are you joking? You can't afford that. Or Christmas time will come. It's like, what do you want? I want this new bike. And then you get like a knockoff version of it or something. And then you just naturally you're grateful because you've got something. Do you know what I mean? But I was very, very
Yeah.
similar to you, that when Rosie and I got married last year, in my speech, I said to her, I promise you, hand on heart, we will have a rich and fulfilling life. And I don't mean rich in terms of loads of material things like what you just said. I mean, we can go to Tesco, Sainsbury's, Waitrose, and we can buy steak. If you
Yeah.
fancy having a bit of a break and you want to go to Dublin, like what we just done, we're out recording this in November. We just came back from Dublin in October. Let's stay in a nice hotel. Like, let's not
Yeah.
just stay in a bloody hostel. Let's stay in a nice hotel. It doesn't need to be 5 stars, 10 grand suite. No, there's not, but let's stay in a nice hotel. If you want to go to that restaurant, it's really expensive. Let's just go there. I
Yeah.
like you, we both had to worry and yeah, have that financial stress. And I think that kind of gives you the drive to go, I don't want to have that worry.
No, absolutely. Like, I don't want to be there, and I don't want my kids to live through that either. But then, I'm kind of toying this up in my head, and it's like, I also don't want my kids to grow up thinking,
Everything's easy.
silver spoon, everything's easy. Mum and dad, God, I'm not saying we're rich, but mum and dad gave us a nice life. So it's kind of the balance, because in some ways it's amazing that that is my background
Mm,
and that was my childhood, because had it not have been, would I have achieved and had the drive to,
mm,
kind of develop my career over all of these years? Or would I have just gone, I'll go traveling, I'll see what
mm,
opportunities come my way. Mum, dad can have some money. You don't know, because I
mm,
don't think there is a trend. I've worked with some absolutely phenomenal people in our industry that have the polar opposite background,
mm,
childhood to what I did, but are
mm,
still exceptional and very focused.
mm.
So I guess that's something we'll never know.
I think it's something that you're ahead of me in respects to we're hoping to have kids next year and all the rest of it, and I
Yeah.
think you'll probably figure it out the older they get and stuff. And I've I've read some books that half of it is about like raising kids and stuff, because I was like proper into psychology, and there's like a weird trend that you see in like rich kids. Like 50% of the rich kids will end up being drug addicts or just, broke or whatever, because they haven't had the discipline, the mindset, and the correct behaviors and habits like you and I have had to put in place to start our own businesses, because they were so self-reliant on family. But I listen to a
Yeah.
lot of podcasts by ex-MMA athletes because I'm a massive UFC and MMA and martial arts fan. And
Yeah.
most of them say that they give their kids like a very minimal amount of quote pocket money. They don't give them money to go traveling or anything. They'll pay for their college if it's in America, because that's a huge thing over in America, obviously. But if
Yeah.
they do ask for money, the only time they will ever consider giving them is if it's an actual investment. So one of their kids came and said, I have this idea, I want to design this product, I've calculated the cost, I need $20,000, this is the markup, blah blah blah. Now, if I'm in a luxury position where I have money laying around like that, and I've done well for myself in 10, 15, 20 years time, and my kid says, I have this business idea, I don't want to go and get a loan from the bank, can you help me? Oh my God. And I think any parent that is in their position to help their kids start a business or to do something good for the world,
Mm.
brilliant.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think it's actually just how you could be the richest person in the world, reproduce, have children. It's the morals that you teach them, and it's the upbringing, I think. And
Mm.
it's tough, isn't it? I guess I don't know the answer to that yet, and
Mm.
maybe I never will. It's something that we're constantly going, are we getting it right? Oh, but I'm not a millionaire yet, so
Love it. Amazing. Well, look, if you do figure that out, then do let me know, because down the line I'll probably be asking you questions and whatnot.
I
But
will
look,
do.
the other topic we were going to discuss, and I was really interested about this because before we clicked record, I mentioned to you that, I've had quite a few women on my podcast talk about a variety of different issues and topics. And I've got a lady that's going to be coming on who her sole job and business is executive coaching for women. And she helps women climb the career ladder, get the pay that they deserve. And if they want to set a business up, she solely specifically works with women, and she's got a brilliant story. Now, you have had a brilliant career. You've set your business up, but we spoke about this. There's two things that happen. You have the societal issues that would hinder both men and women. I can't speak too much about the women issues, obviously, but then you have like the internal struggles where there's things that women can do to help themselves, but perhaps they don't have tools, techniques, strategies to do that. I'll just hand you the mic, and you can tell me kind of maybe your experience or kind of what you see in society and from an internal aspect for women as well.
Okay. There's so much to unpack here because I'll look at it kind of holistically from a society perspective.
Mhm.
And then, if you don't mind, I'll go into kind of internally businesses, businesses that I've worked with,
Mm.
worked at, on how to kind of challenge the status quo on that.
Mhm.
Um, it's really tough. And, like I mentioned at the start, I've got a little girl.
Mm.
So for me, that empowering piece is even more important. How I speak to myself internally,
Mm.
how I treat myself in front of her. So let's just start with those little behaviors.
Mm.
That is so important. Know your worth. And
Mm.
it's hard when you've got that echo chamber. And, especially in the day and age that we're living in, I sound ancient saying that, something that my granny would say. But, living in this day and age with social media being
Mm.
so prevalent, there unfortunately are these pressures, and you should do this, and people are getting married at certain ages, people having children, and and because of these platforms, we're comparing ourselves constantly.
Yeah.
But there is still this narrative that, well, if a woman goes off and has a baby, will they come back to the job that they had?
Mm.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of work to do on this, not just
Mhm.
in our industry, but generally.
Yeah.
So for me, in terms of challenging that social norm, like I said, like, think about it. You actually have to actually train your brain to be like, well, this is something in society that it is still prevalent. So
Mm.
what are the little things that I can do day in, day out, whether it's to myself, empowering myself, speaking to
Mhm.
myself positively, speaking to others positively. And then hopefully that the circles that you surround yourself in, you will drive positive change incrementally.
Mm.
That's not going to happen overnight, and dependent on your circle. But if you can do that in the circle, whether it's
Mm.
a circle of 10 people or a circle of 4 people, if you can start to create that positive feedback loop of, we can do this, we are good enough, we might go and choose to have a family, but that doesn't mean that, it's the end of the world and I have not got a job to come back to, which was wildly, as I said to you at the start of the podcast, how my mind worked
Mm.
when I found out that I was pregnant. Like that that's really sad to look back on, that I
Mm.
was worried and scared, A, of my business leader's reaction, which, he's always been super supportive, um, but B, that I wouldn't have a job to come back to. So I think, creating change in the way that we think about things, first of all. And there's a whole load of other things that we can go on to generally on that society piece. But internally, I think championing women. So, if we look at, I sound like a broken record, but if we look at that story of falling pregnant, being really fearful, the first thing that my boss said to me was, how can we support you when you come back?
Mm.
Right. I was the first employee to get pregnant. So it's not something
Mm.
that the business had ever navigated. And together we created a world-class family-friendly policy.
Oh, that's
So that's the
awesome.
first thing. So it was so
Mm.
inclusive. And then we looked at, we were really fortunate in that we had super strong females in the business. But then how can we create more of those people?
Mm.
How can we, channel female leadership on a really positive note? Let's drive that. Let's put
Mm.
mentor programs in place. Let's have, opportunities to chew the fat on things where, actually we might be really struggling in those
Mm.
certain areas. Let's talk about periods, for God's sake. Let's talk about female women's health. How can we support women, right? So all of these things that society tells women you can't do because of this, and this, how can we actually go, well, yeah, women have periods.
Mm.
Women do have health conditions sometimes that can massively affect the way that
Mm.
your productivity levels are.
Yeah.
How can we actually go, well, these things exist. Let's support women if those women, are facing particular challenges
Mm.
as a crutch to help them get better.
Mm.
So all of these companies that kind of go, well, we'll look at that tomorrow.
Mm.
What you're actually doing by having that mentality is you're stunting growth and opportunity in
Mm.
your business.
Mm.
Um, and actually, you know, those things, and men have this as well. So I don't want to go down the route of female, female, female. But if you're supporting people, whether it's that they've got a family, whether it's within females' health, whether it's because actually they just don't have the confidence to go for that promotion that they really want to go to. If you've got those things in place, those fundamentals, and you can drive positive change,
Mm.
but it's how you get there in the first place, and you've got to want that. Luckily we had a super, super collaborative, cohesive, nurturing leadership team
Mm.
that invested in a people function of
Mm.
8 people globally. So, there was that real investment and that real importance
Yeah.
around it. Some businesses don't have that. And if you don't have that, then just start talking, just start to um, create an environment where open communication is an option, and people can say, this is how I'm feeling.
Mm.
Start with 360 feedback, start with
Mm.
anonymized feedback, whatever that may be. But you've got to start somewhere in order to drive that positive change and in order to shift the narrative. Now, I've just given a few nuances and some examples on that,
Mm.
shifting that society stigma. There's so much. We
Mm.
we could be sat here until Christmas
Yeah.
talking. And I'm really, really conscious that when I get on my high horse about some of these things, I don't come across as, overpowering and bullish,
Mm.
because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole either.
Yeah, yeah, no, you definitely don't. I mean, you're clearly very passionate about it. And I was speaking to my wife last night that it's like I said, obviously, because of my upbringing, I never really necessarily saw the sexism my mum faced in the workplace. I spoke to her on the phone about that the other day, and she was just like working in barbershops in the city in the 80s and 90s. I had some people say, because you're a woman, this, and she said, "Fuck you, I'm leaving." Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I never really saw that. I just saw this like Wonder Woman do her thing and so run her own business. And I said this to Laura on the last episode that every business I've worked at has been really like open with, well, besides my last business, I've been open with communication. But in fairness, my old business was good in terms of having women in leadership positions and things like that. We are the DACH region director was a woman, the operations and people
Yeah.
operations was a woman and stuff. So I think I agree with you 100% that communication and talking about some of these things, whether it be mental health, whether it be what can we do to help support the females in the office? What can we help support new parents as well? Like there are so many businesses, and I know I've only just recently learned about this that the paternity leave actually negatively affects women because men have only got 2 weeks to support the baby and their wife. Like
Yeah.
people look at that, and I used to think of that as just a male thing. No, like if
Mm.
when Rosie has a baby, luckily I'm self-employed. I can take as much time as I want off. My last company, I would have 2 weeks. 2 weeks. That's
Yeah.
crazy. Do you know what I'm trying to say? But there's one thing I wanted to backtrack on, Mel, and ask your opinion on this because you mentioned
Mm.
about um, obviously having the conversation and pushing people and women and helping them internally as well with the confidence piece and stuff like that. But how do we approach it with trying to put women or push women into leadership and higher up positions and stuff while still staying in a sort of meritocracy, if that makes any sense?
Mm. I think it goes back to the communication piece, and it goes back to the frequency of that communication, and then, you know, making sure that the gender pay gap is, succinct, and making sure that the promotional opportunities are very transparent within a business so that
Yeah.
actually the promotion that you want to go for, I can go for as well. And how we go for those, we have to do the same things. So I
Yes.
think
Okay.
it's the frameworks that are underpin, and then the open communication, the frequency of, those meetings, whether that's, a personal development plan
Yeah.
that we have a chat about monthly, whether that's, whatever that is, it needs to be underpinned by the frameworks internally. So,
Mm,
have you a succession plan effectively? Are you
mm,
earmarking people for,
mm.
positions, female and males, um, there's, it's so important. The gender pay gap, are you doing benchmarking exercises to make sure that you're reviewing that at the right times?
Mm.
And do you have the framework to support people and they know how they get to the next level?
Yeah.
I
That
think.
you
Does
you've
that answer your
you've
question?
no, it really does. You've actually
Yeah.
answered that question, and it's I was smiling the whole time because I 100% agree. And I recently just had a conversation with one of my brand new clients that I've just signed up as of today. That if because I sat down with every single recruiter and I said, so where do you want to be in 5 years' time? You want to be an MD or you want to be an ops director or you want to be a principal team leader? Cool. How do you get there? And they go,
Mm.
it's a really good question. And immediately I was like, right, my brain looks at that as a new project, a new challenge, and I'm going to speak to the director and we're going to put in together a process, which bear in mind, I'm not exactly the most process orientated person, but we're going to put a process in place that's both two things. Firstly, if you're in recruitment sales, you have financial targets. You've got sales targets, new companies, etc., etc. Once you get to that level, and we'll throw a hypothetical even number of 10K. Once you hit 10K in the month consistently for 3 months, then you go from trainee to recruiter or recruiter senior, whatever. But then what are the business's values? What is the vision, what is the mission, and what are the standardized behaviors that we look for in our consultants? Because I'm not being funny, and you must have seen this, and I've definitely seen this, where a consultant is outperforming everyone and they're on track to get a promotion, but they're a complete knob. They're not
Yeah.
helpful to any other
Yeah.
people in the business. They're not thinking about driving the business and helping their colleagues and being collaborative and living by the values that we have as an organization. So there have been times where I've said to people, that person, although they are your top biller, they will drag everybody else down. And if you promote that person, whilst they're doing toxic behavior in the office, everyone is going to go, oh, okay, so I just need to do loads of money and I can be a prick just like that person and I'll still get promoted. So that's kind of my mentality with it. And it seems like it might be fairly similar to what you were saying.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it needs to be very clear cut and concise. If you do this, you
Hmm.
do that. If your behaviors and attitudes are this, you get that. And if you and I are both going for a senior consultant promotion, we should be both given the exact same, if it's one
100%.
job, the exact same metrics to get there. It's who gets there quicker, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, look,
And
if I'm being paid less or more than my female counterpart, let's just say I'm being paid more than you, my female counterpart in this hypothetical recruitment business, but I am outperforming you in the billings and I've hit all my metrics. And on my little progression plan sheet, it says that I've hit all these metrics and my salary is X. There should be no issue with that person's being paid more. Same thing, vice versa. If you were outperforming me, etc., and you were paid more, and that's how that business works, totally fine. Where I
Mhm.
get really pissed off is where businesses don't have that process in place, and they promote because they seem like they're doing well. They're a good
Yeah,
bloke, and the female counterpart is maybe relatively not underperforming, but like a couple of grand below their male counterpart, but they're still great. They're still overachieving on target, but they maybe haven't had the confidence or haven't had something in their mind to be able to go, no, I need to have that conversation with my boss to talk about a pay rise. Their male counterpart, for whatever reason, says, boss, I need a pay rise. You go, oh yeah, sorry, we have no process. Here you go, here's your pay rise. And
yeah,
then the girl turns around and goes, hang on a minute, why has this guy got more money than me? And he's like, well, I asked for it. So that's what I was going to ask you. And I had this conversation with Laura and a couple of other women as well, because if the processes and policies are put in place, realistically, your numbers speak for yourself as long as you're being a nice person. But some businesses don't have that. And some people, let's just say people, because some blokes aren't very good at asking for pay rises and some women aren't as well. But what would your advice be to someone that perhaps is in a business where those processes, policies, etc., aren't in place and maybe they feel a bit shy to have that conversation with their boss?
I think first of all, it's equipping the bosses, that layer of leadership,
Hmm.
to be able to have those intelligent conversations. Because the biggest challenge, and I've seen this, I've lived and breathed it as well, where somebody junior, mid level will go to their manager,
Hmm.
will have that conversation, and the manager does not know how to respond.
Oh, really?
So then yeah,
Hmm.
because they haven't, because this happens in our industry, right? People get promoted based on their revenue effectively,
Hmm.
with some behaviors and attitudes, but they've not necessarily got the toolkit and the skills as it stands right now to be a competent leader. To be a competent leader, you've got to be intuitive, you've got to be emotionally intelligent, you've
Yeah.
got to be, you've got to empathize with your
Hmm.
people. There's loads and loads of stuff there. So first of all, it's, are we promoting these people into leadership positions where they're going to be having to have a number of conversations outside of just how many CVs have you sent? How many
Hmm.
companies have you added to the CRM system? How many meaningful conversations have you had?
Yeah.
Because that's just one part of being a leader, right? You've got to be
Hmm.
on top of things. You've got to know where your guys are and you've got to spot that opportunity to develop them. The second thing to that, though, is you don't know what your member of staff is going to come to you with from
Hmm.
one day to another. That's how you grow as a leader. But to promote those people in those positions in the first place, you've got some accountability as a business
Hmm.
to upskill them, to support them, whether that's partnering them with, a good HR people person to help them refine, how to respond to conflict, or,
Hmm.
challenging questions, or whether you get a mentor just to help them generally. If you've
Hmm.
not got that infrastructure in your business, and I know that a lot of companies don't have the luxury of this, how can you encourage that person on that self-development route?
Hmm.
So I think it's not really a simple answer to give. And I
Hmm.
feel like I'm kind of darting around it. But for me, in the first place, you've got to equip your leaders to be able to answer anything that comes to them and do that credibly as well. Because if they don't, better believe that person's going out and they're telling the team they don't know what they're talking about, or they've just been a dickhead, So, gosh, if they don't know what to say, it's a case of, well, justify to me why you think that pay rise is deserved. Talk to me about, your last 6 months performance. Okay, right. And then if you don't have the answers, go away and talk to somebody that might do. But again, to underpin that, you need the frameworks in place. You need job descriptions for all of your internal roles. You need, the pay grades. You need progression path. And I am going to just give myself a little bit of a promotional push here. Apologize, but that's where, if you've not got the budget for somebody internally full time, you partner with somebody that can help you on that journey. It's super important, and it'll future proof your business and your culture.
Love it. So I'm conscious of time, Mel, but there are two other topics we were going to speak about, and probably the way this conversation is going, we probably won't have time to talk about both of them. So I'll throw it to you. Both of them, I think, kind of link into the conversation as a whole to what we've been speaking about. One of the topics you raised with me was navigating mental health, how to approach it from the right way. Now, that could be from a business owner, from a leader of a recruitment business, or just from a recruiter standpoint. And the other topic you mentioned was utilizing ED&I as part of a value proposition for recruiters. So I think both topics actually kind of really go into what we've already spoke about. But like I said, you've got to go shortly. So which one would you want to go for?
Look, I think they both do cross over, don't they? Mental health, ED&I. Let's look at what you stand for as an organization in the first instance. Okay, so if you're unsure how to navigate mental health, how to navigate ED&I into your processes, first of all, look at your values. I said this on a podcast I was on with Leisha Holmes, actually, at the start of the year. I know you had her on recently. Look at what you stand for as a business and remember that, because if you are a true values-led business, they won't have been plucked from thin air, and you should be living and breathing them in your policies and your processes in your everyday. And then think, well, are we demonstrating that in these processes? Are we living and breathing them? And then to narrow that down further, if we look at something like ED&I, it's a huge topic at the moment. And I don't profess to be the expert in our industry whatsoever. I know you've had somebody on recently that is their absolute sweet spot and bread and butter, but I've been involved in creating robust ED&I policies. And it's really important that if you are a recruitment business or any business and you want to incorporate this into your culture and your environment, know why you're doing that. If it's a tick box exercise, it will not exist. It will not stand the test of time, and it will not be something that exists in 6 months, because it will be something that falls to the back of an archive and no one's living and breathing it. So you've got to get people on board. You've got to go know why you want to do it. You've got to get your leadership teams involved. There's so much to uncover, but looking at your processes, looking at, is it balanced? Is it fair? Are you going back to those kind of grassroots of those values and going, can we hand on heart say that, we're demonstrating these every day? If you've not got an ED&I policy, that's a really good place to start. And then also, it's not going, right, okay, what do we need to do? Let's get it done. It's thinking about what's important to you as a business, and let's start small and let's make real impact on those areas before we try and do everything, but also, like, because it is so prevalent and businesses are so unsure on where to start and what to do, especially in recruitment, like if you have those processes and you have a really strong, robust ED&I framework that is, is employee-led, right? And it's values-led, it's employee-led. The value that can add to your clients is huge, absolutely huge. So in turn, that will pay dividends later down the line. But just taking that away, you're then partnering with businesses that share similar values, beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
That then creates true partnership. That then creates that, what everybody strives for, nurturing those relationships, existing business that becomes, repeat business.
Yeah.
So there's a whole load of stuff on that. And like I say, there's probably others in our industry better placed to unpack it. But from my experience and, being involved at this in a global recruitment business, as well as supporting clients on it, go back to the grassroots. What do you want to be known for? What's your identity? What are our true values, right? How can we make this really, really fucking meaningful?
Mm. I love that. Too many businesses, not even just recruitment businesses, when it's Pride Month, they change their logo to the rainbow. You can just see that it's not meaningful. It's
It's
just a
not
tick
genuine.
box. It's not
It
genuine.
is.
And go on.
And unfortunately, and this is where like that education piece comes in,
Mm.
whoever's driving that, oh, we need to change the logo to Pride, or we need to do something around mental health awareness week. Unfortunately, the education doesn't evolve because it's a do this, not a. So that's why the values piece, this is why the identity piece, this is why are we doing this because we're really passionate and why we're doing it. And you know what? There's some initiatives that you might not want to drive, and that's absolutely fine. But I think that when businesses do it to tick a box and to say, we've done it, we're like, because we didn't want to be left out, and we also wanted to show our nod to it. But that marketing girl that's been told to change the logo doesn't really know why. She's just doing it, especially if they're inexperienced and they've not, they're kind of a recent grad or, a second jobber. So that education doesn't evolve, and that's really sad.
Yeah, I think with ED&I, it's something I'm learning a little bit more about. And we had a little bit of a conversation around what my thoughts were before. I had the lady on the podcast was an expert. I've got a much better perspective of it now. I've finally spoken to someone that can actually talk about it articulately. But the mental health aspect, I've done Movember a few times, raised thousands of pounds for charity, and openly talked about my challenges with mental health. And the reason why I think, from my perspective, I would be able to be more confident and qualified to speak on that as opposed to ED&I, is obviously because of my own lived experience and all the rest of it, and also being in recruitment. And you can share this with me, right? That being in the recruitment sector, it's just a stress pit of a job. It is an absolutely insane job. The highs are great, the lows are really, really low, and naturally with that comes stress, burnout, anxiety, and when things haven't gone well for a period of time, maybe you get let go, then you can fall into things like depression. I've had things like insomnia, which is just crippling. So I think we've still got a fair way to go with the mental health aspects, but I guess a question I could maybe throw to you on that, what do you think the recruitment industry could be doing more with both raising awareness about mental health and also helping? Because I think raising awareness and actually helping are similar but are relatively different, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. I think as an industry, we've come on massively, first of all. There are businesses that are still doing things on mental health for the sake of doing things, and you go under the bonnet or you go on Glassdoor and you can see that there's absolutely no support there. It goes back to understanding your people. So, as part of your wider employee value proposition and knowing how to make sure you're attracting those similar people again and retaining the people that you've got, you need to continually ask what works, what problems people are facing. You need to equip your leaders to be able to have these quite tough conversations at times. You need to have initiatives internally that work for your people. So, I know from nurturing a team, those little, they might be very kind of not obvious, but when your team member walks in and something's wrong, right? So I just used to know how to react because we'd had that conversation on day one. If I'm like this today, it's because of this. And we just do little things to each other, or like, little glance or whatever. And I'd know whether that needed escalating or if that needed leaving. Um, knowing, knowing that real life things exist, um, people can be dealt very, very, very tough cards. Does the business enable you to take a mental health day? Right. Now, we don't want to go too far with that because in our industry, in any industry, there's always going to be people that take the mick. But again, what are the parameters to give somebody that space? Is there, an opportunity in the company where relatable people, mental health first aiders, what are employees within that company, it's a safe space to go to? Are there EAP measures that you have through, your HR system or third party or actually internally? So knowing that people have the tools to be able to acknowledge they're struggling and get help for that if they need to, which does come with an investment, but for me, you can't put a price on it. And equipping leaders in the right way to be able to navigate these quite sensitive conversations, because I've worked with leaders that some horrific things have happened for them in their teams with members of staff. And as a business, any business now has an accountability to equip their leaders if they're promoting them, investing in actually how do we navigate these conversations? How do we have the right level of empathy? The stigma around mental health still very much exists. And there are people, unfortunately, in the world that do contribute to that stigma because people can take advantage of, the mental health days, like I mentioned, and almost it's creating that environment where there's a fine line between, and I really want to pick my words carefully here, but promoting it too much so that the ones that take advantage, it becomes an indulgence, versus this is really real and it exists, and we need to create a platform for those to feel supported. So the raising awareness part, I think, starts early on with what are the tools that we need for our people that exist in the business, and what do we foresee we will need in the future as we grow. I think.
I mean, you've put that tremendously well, Mel. And I got my mental health first aider certificate in my last company, done a presentation on it, and my whole thing was that there are going to be times where you're stressed and you just need to get it off your chest, but there are going to be times where it isn't a problem, you're just moaning. And if it is the fact that you just need to moan, have a little vent and crack on. But if it's a serious issue, speak to someone, ideally myself, because I'm qualified to handle this. But yeah, you're right. I think it does hurt the initiative when you have people taking advantage of it. So I would urge anyone, a leader, manager, recruiter, that it is a very real thing that affects a lot of people. I've suffered a lot this year alone since running my business. I'm sure you have as well. But
yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, and not to go too deeply into this, but after the birth of my second, I struggled with postnatal depression. I didn't actually realize until I'd come out the other end that it was as bad as it was. And I think that's another thing that we need to be aware of. I thought I was okay. In actual fact, I wasn't. So raising awareness generally to say, look out for these behaviors, look out for, if you're feeling this way, because I didn't know. I just knew that I felt a little bit like Groundhog Day, and I'm someone that has a massive thirst for life. Like, I get enjoyment from the little things. I've just had an IKEA order come of like new mugs and like glasses and things, and I'm the person that gets so excited about the little things, and I didn't anymore. So I think it's equipping businesses for the staff to recognize actually what's just having a bad day, but what are those consistent feelings that actually I probably need to recognize now so that they don't become, so
Mm.
damaging later down the line.
Mm. Yeah, you're spot on. Well, listen, I know that you've got to shoot in a minute, so I don't want to take too much of your time. And as you know, the final question that I wrap up every episode with, sorry, is following today's show, how can people get 1% better in recruitment?
I love this question. And I love that underpins your podcasts as well. I think it's really unique. Um, this is something I'm working with a lot of businesses on at the moment. I'm working with my partner on because he's
Mm.
got a business. I'm working on myself with it. I'm working with consultants that I support and develop. Ask for feedback consistently. I don't think we do that enough. And I think it is a difference if we just represent that on kind of recruitment industry, the job, say, as a 360 consultant. If you're not asking for feedback, you will stay at the level you're at. You'll probably be quite a transactional contingent recruiter.
Mm.
And to get ahead of the competition now, and probably one of the toughest markets we've known, certainly for us in our kind of era of recruitment, you need to almost put yourself on that chopping block, expose yourself to some sometimes uncomfortable feedback that could be the difference between you securing, your future business next year and the year after and the year after that. So I think 1% better, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and in your processes implement an opportunity to consistently ask for feedback. And I'm not just talking your clients and your candidates. For me, it's my clients. For my partner, it's his customers. But I just think there's so much power in saying, how did that go? Where did I miss the mark? What did you like? What did you not like? Because the danger is if we don't acknowledge that and we don't identify what it is, then we could lose out. We never asked, but then the person next door puts it right.
Brilliant. Do you know what I'm going to do after this, Mel? I'm going to be sending out anonymous Google surveys to every recruiter I've worked with because it's something that I did a lot when I was the L&D manager. I always used to send them, and because I had no L&D experience, I had the proper imposter syndrome, like, is what I'm
Yeah.
doing actually working? And as a
Is it
recruiter,
working? Is it right? Yeah.
yeah, if it's working as a recruiter because you're doing a deal. But as an L&D
Mm.
manager, I'm not actually responsible entirely for getting that deal done, etc. So I used to send it out all the time and consistently got good feedback. I got some really good recommendations this year, but I don't think I've done enough of the anonymous, what do you think could be improved, like how would you improve that session, etc., etc. So again, I
Yeah.
always say this, but I always come off the end of these podcasts learning something new or having a little bit of a takeaway. I'm sure loads of people took loads away from that, but that's definitely my takeaway. But look, Mel, thank you very much for taking the time today. I
Thank
really
you so
really enjoyed
much.
this conversation. In terms of who you would like, I mean, if people were to reach out to you, you've obviously talked a lot about what you do. Yeah, tell us a little bit about what types of people should reach out to you and how to get in touch with you.
Amazing. Thank you. So yeah, business leaders of recruitment companies, um, people, people managers, HR people, internal
Mm,
talent,
mm,
employer brand specialists. There's a couple of models. So if you've not got the infrastructure, resource internally, and you're struggling with, I don't know, let's say talent acquisition, I
mm,
come in, I embed myself within the business. I'm part of the culture.
mhm,
I embody your values. I have to do that anyway to
mm,
make sure that it's a fit for me to work with them. Um, and I own the projects. Second to that is less kind of hands-on. It's more of a handhold approach.
mhm,
I partner with kind of my counterparts really within those businesses.
mm,
And, as people professionals, we're not amazing at every aspect of that job. It's impossible. So I can come in and support and complement on the areas where that individual may not necessarily have the skills as it stands right now, or the know-how to get that project over the line, to
Yeah.
communicate it out internally. So I'll partner, I'll upskill, I'll mentor, and we'll work on those things together. And it's a range of, I cover anything from all of you kind of people processes, from
Mm.
induction, onboarding, performance
Nice.
frameworks, talent acquisition strategies, EVP, that underpins my whole business model, your employee value proposition.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be more than happy to share more.
Wonderful. Well, again, Mel, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I think genuinely there's been so much value that you've offered people. I've learnt loads as well, which is always a plus. And to the viewers, listeners, if you got this far, like the video if you're watching it on YouTube, subscribe, comment as well, really helps. We're on Apple and Spotify, and the monthly newsletter, as we're recording this, it's the 8th of November. We've just hit over 1,000 subscribers on the monthly newsletter. So if you subscribe to that, you've missed an episode. You get the lowdown of everyone's answer to the 1% better question and some other bits and bobs about the episode. So thank you very much, everyone. And until the next time.